Welcome back to the channel. Today, we're going to be kicking off a brand new project, and as you could probably tell from the thumbnail and the title of this video, we chose a small pickup truck. Now, small, practical, and affordable pickup trucks are something you can no longer buy new here in the United States of America. So, we're going to have to build our own. Well, sort of. You see, I don't have the resources to build a pickup truck from scratch, so we're going to use this dilapidated 36-year-old pickup truck and rebuild it to our specifications, which will basically be a no-frills diesel-powered truck. I reckon for a lot of folks, a small, simple, low-cost truck is something they would actually buy. But instead, all we have here in the States are huge trucks with tons of useless gizmos that make the vehicle unreliable and just add to the cost. Nope, I don't want anything like that. I'm going to build exactly what I want. So our starting point for this project is a 1989 Chevrolet S10. This rig has the classic square body look, which I really like. The chassis is robust and parts for these older trucks are still widely available. And that's good news because it looks like we're going to have to replace a lot of stuff. Now clearly this little short bed truck has seen better days, but the good news is it pushes really easy, so that's an upfront bonus that we weren't expecting. Anyway, despite the shabby appearance, this truck is perfect for our shenanigans. This two-door standard cab short bed tips the scales at a reasonable 2,600 pounds. Well, at least that's the numbers that were published. Who knows if that's true or not. Now, I prefer long bed trucks because they're more practical, but these little short bed trucks have their charm. Yeah, the topper is as ugly as they get, and it's gonna have to go. But for now, it's not hurting anything, and it provides covered storage for all the parts. Now, this truck does have some rust and a few dents, so we're gonna have to do some body work and paint to make it look tip-top. The good news is, I have a clean replacement hood and both front fenders in stock. Now the rust on the doors could be repaired. You see, replacement skins for the lower half of the doors are still available, and that's great, but I'm on the lookout for better doors that can be sourced locally. The rocker panels and the cab corners will also need to be replaced at some point, and that'll be a fun project. However, the rest of the cab is extremely solid. Inside the truck, it has the required 3 pedals and a thingy poking out of the floor, which also has a bunch of numbers on it. This is the only way a truck should ever be optioned. No excuses are going to be accepted. The odometer is showing 172,000 miles, so this buggy's been around the block a few times, but it hasn't gone as far as the moon yet like most of my cars. So all things considered, this truck is still pretty fresh. The rest of the interior is very well used. Now, about a year ago, I picked up basically the same type of truck and the interior was completely roached out, but I was able to make it a little bit more civilized with fresh carpeting and replacement upholstery. So there is hope for this truck. You know, nothing fancy, just cleaner. Now, used cars are always packed with treasures of some sort. Let's see what's in the glove box. Nothing really except the RPO sticker. You know, the RPO sticker is a treasure in itself. Basically, this is the build sheet for the vehicle. So, I went ahead and looked up all the codes. MW1 means it has a 5-speed transmission with a 4.03 first gear and a 0.86 overdrive. LN8 is the code for the 2.5-liter Iron Duke. Some people love these engines and some people hate them. For us, it doesn't really matter because we're going to be getting rid of the engine and build this truck the way it should have been built. GT4, well, that means this thing has a 3.73 rear axle. With a small engine, that's probably pretty handy to have. And JM7 indicates power brakes. I'm pretty sure power brakes were an option on this vehicle. C42 means this thing has a heater with an outside air vent, so no air conditioning. N51 means you're going to be getting a workout because this rig doesn't have power steering. UL5 is radio delete. That's perfect for the cheap people. And X81 means this truck was built as a price leader. Now, I'm not sure, but I think this makes this an S10-EL. EL means economy leader. This was the type of truck your cheap Uncle Bob would buy. You know the guy I'm talking about. The guy that shows up when something's free. Yeah, that kind of sounds like me. Anyway, let's see what's behind the seat. And nothing. Whoop, there is a speaker. It doesn't look very fancy though. Oh, and this thing has a sliding back window. Very nice. That's a form of air conditioning, I guess. Now, if this thing has speakers, then it must have a radio. I didn't notice anything on the dashboard. Plus, the build sheet says it has the radio delete option. Uh-oh, well, it has an AudioVox AV934. I wonder if they used an adapter or did they hack up the extremely rare radio delete panel. Yeah, the interior is definitely going to need some work, but for now it's going to provide adequate comfort. Let's check under the hood. You know, back in the mid-80s, these trucks were available with a 2.2-liter 63-horsepower Isuzu diesel. I reckon those trucks are hard to find. Now, according to the build sheet, this guy has a 2.5-liter 4-cylinder Iron Duke. So the Duke puts out 92 horsepower at 4,400 RPM and 130 pounds-feet of torque at 2,800 RPM. These engines didn't put out a lot of power given their size. Now, what's interesting about this truck is it has air conditioning, which is in complete violation of the build sheet. So somebody spent a few bucks to retrofit the truck with my very favorite option, but the air conditioner system seems pretty much foobar and it's missing a lot of parts. So I think we're going to have to ditch it. Yeah, it looks like the condenser's missing along with all the high pressure lines. So the AC system's not going to happen. Let's fire this thing up and take it for a ride. Well, the Iron Duke fired right up and it runs perfect, but the truck doesn't want to move. This is actually no surprise. The previous owner did mention that the truck was pretty much dead in the water and there was something wrong with the transmission. I think the transmission is probably okay and it's the clutch that's not working properly. The clutch pedal actually feels normal and there's a good chance the clutch is just worn out. So I'm going to go ahead and jack up the truck and see if we can get the wheels to spin with no load on the clutch. Well, the wheels do spin without any problem with no load on the clutch, and the speedometer even works. Nice. The transmission does shift through all the gears perfectly normal, so that kind of confirms the clutch is the problem. You know, it's interesting that the clutch actually feels completely normal. Now, before I condemn the clutch, I'm going to go ahead and double check the hydraulic release cylinder. Like so many modern vehicles with standard transmissions, the mechanism that's used to disengage and engage the clutch is done by a simple hydraulic system. In order to confirm we don't have a problem with the hydraulic system, I backed off on the nuts that hold the slave cylinder to the transmission, and that'll remove any pressure that may be on the release fork. Long story short, that wasn't the problem, and it's confirmed that the clutch is completely smoked. So this was not easy. Despite the Iron Duke being somewhat of a small engine, pulling it along with the transmission was no fun at all. I guess the engine had to come out anyway, so at least now we can move forward with the diesel engine swap. Now, pulling the front clip of the truck wasn't necessary, obviously, but the fenders, hood, and a lot of other stuff need to come off in order to do the bodywork repairs, and now seemed like a good enough time. And as a bonus, removing the sheet metal did make a difficult job a lot easier. The air conditioning unit that was stuck to the firewall was actually severely damaged and had been fiberglass back together, so it's good that we're not going to be using it anyway. The non-air conditioned trucks use a different and much smaller blower motor housing, and we'll have to pick one up in order to get the heater to work again. I think at this point we need to pull the pressure plate and have a look at the clutch disc. My money's on the clutch disc being completely worn out. The gearbox seems fine and there's no evidence of anything binding. The input shaft, throwout bearing, and the release fork all appear pretty much normal and everything moves smoothly. So it boils down to this guy being the problem. Now, a clutch that's worn out to the point where the vehicle will no longer move is extreme, but on a beater truck like this one, perhaps it just wasn't worth fixing when the clutch started showing signs of needing replacement. Or the person who last drove it just didn't realize the clutch was on borrowed time. Wow, the flywheel definitely got hot. Hopefully it can be resurfaced. And here's the problem. The disc is right down to the rivets. I've actually never seen a clutch this worn out before. Now, the other side still has friction material on it. Interesting. I'm sure there are folks who've seen hundreds of spent clutches. Is it normal for one side to be down to the rivets and the other side to still have a little bit of material left? Alright, well, the disc is marked Valio, and I've used this brand before without any problems. It just doesn't seem right to me. Now, the clutch cover or pressure plate is in really bad shape. This poor guy took quite a beating and it lost big time. You know, the feedback that I got from the clutch pedal indicated this had strong diaphragm springs, so the spring force was probably about right, at least it felt right to me. Oh, so it's very hard to see, but it's marked made in the Far East, if you know what I mean. Interesting. So this is definitely a replacement part and it's not original to the truck. I don't think General Motors was sourcing anything from this Far East until sometime in the 90s. So that means this truck was on its second clutch. Wow, so 2 clutches in 172,000 miles. You know, that's definitely possible, and I know people that can chew through a clutch in less than 100,000 miles. But around here in nowhere, Kansas, we don't have a lot of traffic. Theoretically, a clutch should outlast the car if it's driven correctly. At least now we know, and it really doesn't matter. All the clutch components were going to be replaced anyway. Although it would have been nice to do some performance testing on the truck before we took it apart. But I reckon we can use published data to compare our new diesel engine to the Iron Duke. So I'll bet a lot of you folks noticed I haven't really talked about the diesel swap yet, and that's on purpose. The diesel swap will be coming up in a future episode, but right now I'm forbidden to say anything specific. That's the deal I made. But I will tell you this, it's going to be easy and anybody can do it. We're actually going to be doing a low performance fuel economy version and a high performance version as well. So now is the time to subscribe if you haven't done so already. This project is definitely going to be a lot different than what we normally do, and I want to show a lot more hands-on to prove that a massive project like this can be done on a tight budget. Everything from the engine swap to making the truck look better is going to require some skill, but we'll tell our story in a way that the average person can follow. Today, we're introducing this project to the audience because, quite frankly, we can't hide something this big in our little shop, so now it's no secret and we don't have to worry about this thing getting on camera while we work on our other projects. Anyway, this truck looks like crap. I think we can all agree on that. I feel like it's going to need to look a lot more respectable because nobody wants to be seen in something like this. Fast forward a few minutes and I threw a couple of used front fenders on the truck. These fenders are genuine Chevy parts and the fitment is nearly perfect without putting in any effort. I have to say the truck's already looking a lot better. Now this fender was intended to be installed on my other Chevy S10, so that's a problem. You see, on the good S10, this fender looks fine, but it does have some Bondo that's starting to fail, and I want to replace this fender with a rust-free original part. So that means this fender can't stay on the new project truck. Now, the purpose of temporarily installing this fender was to confirm that an original part will fit the truck without any issues. And it does fit pretty good. So as an experiment, I went ahead and ordered a low-cost replacement fender, and I want to see if a huge body part can arrive undamaged and if it'll even fit. So as you can see, this brand new replacement fender arrived in an oversized box. Let's see if it's got any damage. Well, once I opened up the box, it became apparent that there's some secondary packaging to help prevent damage. Let me flip this guy over. So far, so good. Whoa, yep, I spoke too soon. There's a ding right here. That's too bad. The good news is it's not a big ding and it can be easily repaired. The rest of the fender appears to be in perfect condition. Now, unfortunately, some shipping damage is to be expected, and it looks like this fender is definitely a keeper. Alright, let's see if this will fit the truck. So the new fender actually fits pretty good. I only have 4 bolts holding it in place, and I did have to use a ratchet strap to pull the radiator support back a fraction of an inch to get the door gaps to look about the same as the other S10. Now the goal is to make this truck look respectable, and it's not going to be a showstopper. You know, when you consider that this fender was $110 with free shipping, it's not a bad deal at all. I would still prefer to use an original General Motors part, but this is an acceptable substitute. Now I really need to find a clean set of doors, but I may actually have a second look at using patch panels on the doors. When it comes to paint and bodywork, I've done about a half dozen cars in the past. I'm no expert, but I do know how to paint and do seamless body repair. For this truck, well, we're going to try a few experiments and use unconventional methods, especially when it comes to laying down the paint. Apparently, these cheap electric sprayers are all the rage right now on YouTube, and folks are saying that these things can actually do a good job painting a car. I find this fascinating because if it's true, it would eliminate a whole bunch of expensive equipment. So So we're going to give it a shot. Now, obviously, this isn't the tool you would use if you wanted a perfect paint job, but it may be good enough for this truck. And I say we find out. But if it doesn't work, we can always fall back and use normal equipment. Like I mentioned earlier, this project will include several new and different topics that this channel doesn't normally do. And perhaps it's time we tried something like this. Of course, unusual engine swaps and small engine experiments are still our bread and butter. But I feel doing a low-cost makeover on this truck may also be appealing to the bulk of the audience. I'm actually looking forward to getting this thing to look a lot more respectable and do it on the cheap. Anyway, I reckon I have a lot of stuff to do, and perhaps it's time we end this video. We'll see you next time. Until then.